So, this whole thing started about 2 weeks ago when my dad texted me asking if we could grab lunch and catch up. TBH, I was immediately suspicious because we don't really do that. My family has always treated me like the black sheep, even though I'm literally the only one with a stable income and my own place. My dad runs this failing construction supply business with my older brothers, Dale, 32, and Edward, 30, and they've always acted like I'm some kind of disappointment for not joining the family legacy or whatever. Growing up, it was always the same story. My brothers were the real men, who worked with their hands while I was the soft one who liked math and computers. When I got a scholarship for college, my dad literally told me book smarts won't put food on the table at my graduation dinner. My mom just nodded along with whatever he said, and my sister Lila, 25, has always been daddy's princess who can do no wrong. So anyway, I agreed to lunch thinking maybe someone died or something. We meet at this diner near my apartment, and surprise, surprise, my dad brought my brothers too. They're all being weirdly nice, asking about my job, my apartment, if I'm seeing anyone. Then my dad gets to the point. Their business is expanding, and they need a cosigner for a $80K business loan because their credit is shot. They wanted me to put my name and credit on the line for them. I asked to see their business plan and financials before making any decisions. Because duh, that's just common sense. My dad got all huffy but said he'd have my brother email everything over. When I got the documents later that day, holy shit, they were hemorrhaging money, hadn't turned a profit in 3 years, and their expansion plan was basically throw money at the problem and hope it works. No market research, no realistic projections, nothing. I called my dad the next day and told him I couldn't sign. Explained that the plan wasn't solid and the business was already underwater. He went ballistic, started screaming about family loyalty and how I was always the selfish one. Hung up on me mid-sentence. Figured that was that. I was actually relieved it was over with. Then yesterday, around 6 p.m., I hear a truck outside my apartment building. I look out the window and see my dad's pickup and a rented moving truck. Before I can even process what's happening, there's pounding on my door. I open it and my entire family barges in. Dad, mom, both brothers, and even my sister on FaceTime with her husband and kids watching. Dad immediately shoves past me and starts barking orders. Dale, start in the bedroom. Edward, get the electronics. We're taking everything. I'm completely confused and ask what the hell is going on. My dad gets in my face and goes, "You load your shit in that truck right now or you're done. Done." My mom runs into my bedroom and comes out with armfuls of my clothes, dumping them on the floor. "Should have kicked you out at 18 like I wanted to." She spits at me. Meanwhile, my sister is on FaceTime going, "Everyone watch. Family disappointment finally gets what's coming to him." I try to grab my laptop off the table, but Edward snatches it first. "This is mine now." Dale grabs my gaming console and goes, "Always wanted one of these." My dad finds a folder with work documents and throws it across the room, papers flying everywhere. "Your precious job? The homeless guy I'm looking at doesn't need these." I try to stop them, grabbing Dale's arm as he's unplugging my TV. My dad shoves me hard from behind and I fall against the wall, hitting my head. I'm not even on the ground for 2 seconds before Lila is screaming, "Get his face! Get his face!" And my mom is holding her phone up to record me. "Look, everyone! The genius is crying." They stripped my whole apartment in like 20 minutes. Furniture, clothes, electronics, even food from the fridge. The only reason I still had my phone is because it was in my pocket. As they're loading the last of my stuff, the building manager shows up with security, hands me an envelope with eviction papers. Turns out my family had been in contact with him for 3 months, paid the fee to break my lease, and told him I was moving out. The manager is pissed because apparently they told him I'd be out last week. My mom smirks and goes, "See? Even strangers know you're worthless." My dad throws my birth certificate at me and says, "Only thing you get to keep. Proof of our biggest mistake." They left me there with basically nothing but the clothes I was wearing. My phone, wallet, and a folder of scattered papers. Security actually felt bad enough to let me stay in the lobby while I figured out what to do. I ended up sleeping in a 24-hour diner, using their Wi-Fi to contact work and explain I needed emergency time off. This morning, I got a cheap motel room with what little savings I could access from my phone. The real kicker, just found out from my cousin John that my dad has been telling the whole extended family that I stole money from the business years ago, and that's why they've always treated me like shit. Complete lie. I never even had access to their accounts, but they've been poisoning everyone against me for years. I'm done. No more Mr. Nice Guy. My whole life they've called me the family failure while secretly being jealous that I actually made something of myself without their precious business. Now they've taken everything and left me with nothing. For the last 24 hours, I've been planning exactly how to make them regret ever doing this to me. I know their business inside out now from those financial documents. I know all their suppliers, their client list, their outstanding debts, their bank. I know exactly where to hit them, where it hurts. And the best part? My phone just exploded with notifications. 73 missed calls, 45 text messages. All from them. Looks like they finally realized how badly they fucked up. Update coming soon. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. Update 1. First, holy shit. Thank you to everyone who reached out after my last post. Ingle, I was in a pretty dark place writing that from a shitty motel room with nothing but my phone and the clothes I was wearing. Some of you sent really helpful advice about tenant rights and financial stuff that actually helped me get moving on my plan. So where to start? Those 73 calls and 45 texts I mentioned? I ignored most of them, but finally listened to one voicemail from my dad. Get this. He wasn't calling to apologize. He was calling because they found out my laptop has a password and they wanted me to hand it over like a man so they could use it. The audacity of these people is actually unreal. I spent that first night in the motel making lists of what I still had access to. My bank accounts, thank God for phone banking apps, my cloud storage with some important documents, and most importantly, those business financial docs I had reviewed before refusing to co-sign their loan. I couldn't sleep, so I spent hours going through those files line by line on my phone screen. That's when I noticed something weird. There were several credit accounts opened in the business name that didn't make sense for a construction supply company. Like, why would they need multiple high-limit personal credit cards? And why were there payments to places like Best Buy and Apple? The next morning, I called my bank to make sure my accounts were secure. The customer service rep sounded concerned when I explained my situation and suggested I run a credit check ASAP. When I did, there were 3 credit cards opened in my name that I never applied for. 2 maxed out, 1 nearly there. I literally felt sick. Called the credit card companies immediately to report fraud. They asked if I wanted to press charges against whoever did this. I said not yet, but I was documenting everything. I know exactly who did this. My dad and brothers had all my personal info, including my SSN from when I lived at home years ago. While dealing with this credit nightmare, I was also trying to figure out where to live. Motels are expensive AF, and I couldn't keep burning through my savings. That's when I remembered my mom's brother, Uncle Jack. He and my dad had some huge falling out before I was born, and we were never allowed to talk to him growing up. My dad always called him a backstabbing snake, but never explained why. I found him on Facebook and sent a message explaining my situation. He responded within an hour and asked if we could talk on the phone. We ended up talking for almost 3 hours. Turns out Uncle Jack and my dad started the construction supply business together 35 years ago. It was actually successful until my dad forced him out by threatening to tell Aunt Karen about some affair Jack supposedly had, which Jack swears was a complete lie. My dad basically stole his half of the business and has been running it into the ground ever since. Uncle Jack offered to let me stay in his guest house while I get back on my feet. He lives about an hour away from my old apartment, so I took an Uber there the next day. The guest house is small, but way better than a motel, and having a real bed and shower honestly felt like luxury after what I'd been through. With a safe place to stay, I started phase 1 of my plan. Remember those suppliers and clients I mentioned? I spent a day making a spreadsheet of every single one from the business docs. Then I did something that wasn't technically revenge, just strategic information sharing. I called the 3 biggest suppliers and introduced myself as Vincent, last name, son of dad's name. I explained that I was helping review some family business matters and had noticed their invoices were consistently paid 90 days late. I asked if this was a standard arrangement they had with my family's business. All 3 suppliers were like, "Hell no, we've been trying to get paid for months." One guy actually laughed and said they were about to put my family's account on credit hold. I thanked them for the information and said I was just trying to understand the business better. I did the same with 2 of their biggest clients. Just called, introduced myself as family, and asked how their experience had been. Both complained about late deliveries and quality issues. One mentioned they were actively looking for a new supplier. I didn't tell anyone to stop doing business with my family. I didn't have to. I just asked questions and listened. But within 48 hours, I got a text from Edward saying, "WTF, did you say to Miller Supply?" Apparently, their main supplier had suddenly demanded payment in full before any new orders. While this was happening, I was also dealing with the identity theft situation. Filed police reports for the fraudulent credit cards, submitted all the documentation to get them removed from my credit report, and froze my credit so they couldn't open anything else. Then, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was the loan officer my family had been working with for that $80K business loan. He was calling to verify some information on the application. I asked what information, and he said, well, your signature as co-applicant. They had forged my signature on a loan application. I immediately told him I had never agreed to co-sign any loan and had explicitly refused when asked. Sent him copies of the text messages where I told my dad no. The loan officer thanked me and said he would need to reevaluate the application status. An hour later, my dad showed up at Uncle Jack's place. To this day, I have no idea how he found out where I was staying. He pounded on the door of the guest house, screaming that I was a traitor and that I was destroying the family. Uncle Jack came out of the main house and told my dad to leave, but my dad shoved him hard against the porch railing. I called 911 while filming the whole thing on my phone. My dad saw me recording and charged toward me, but tripped on the garden hose and fell face first onto the concrete path. By the time the cops arrived, he was sitting in his truck with a bloody nose, still screaming threats. The cops made him leave and asked if we wanted to press charges for trespassing and assault. Uncle Jack said no, but we did get a police report documenting the incident. As the cops were leaving, one of them mentioned that if my dad came back, we should call immediately and consider filing for a restraining order. That night, I got a call from Lila. She was crying, saying I was tearing the family apart and didn't I know Dad and Mom needed that loan to save the business? I asked her if she knew they had stolen my identity and forged my signature on loan documents. She went quiet for a second, then said, of course they had to since I was being so selfish. I asked her why they'd always treated me like crap, even before any of this loan business. Her answer actually shocked me. She said it was because I was supposed to be a girl. Apparently, Mom and Dad had been told they were having a daughter after an ultrasound, had picked out the name Genevieve, and were devastated when I turned out to be a boy instead. They already had 2 sons and wanted a daughter. They got Lila 3 years later, and somehow had always held it against me that I wasn't female. As fucked up as that is, it actually explained a lot about how they'd treated me growing up, always comparing me to my brothers, being disappointed when I didn't fit their idea of masculinity, the constant criticism. Lila finished by saying if I didn't stop what I was doing, I'd never be welcome in the family again. I laughed and asked if being thrown out of my apartment, having all my possessions stolen, and having my identity stolen counted as being welcome in the family. She hung up on me. The next day, I got an email from my old building manager. He'd found a box of mail and some packages with my name on them that had been delivered after I moved out. He said he could hold them for a week before returning everything to sender. I drove over to pick them up, half expecting my family to be waiting to ambush me again. Instead, I found that among the mail was a letter from the IRS addressed to me at the business address. I opened it to find they were questioning some business deductions claimed under my name for the previous tax year, a tax year where I wasn't even working for the family business. This was getting more serious by the minute. My family hadn't just stolen my stuff and tried to steal my credit. They'd been using my name for tax fraud too. I made copies of everything and added it to my growing file of evidence. Then I made one more call to the IRS fraud hotline. I explained the situation and they set up an appointment for me to come in with my documentation. That night, my phone blew up again. This time it was my brothers, both calling and texting nonstop. The messages ranged from threats, "You're dead to us," to bizarre attempts at guilt, "Mom's crying every night because of you," to sudden fake niceness. Let's talk this out like family. I didn't respond to any of them, but I did check my email one last time before bed. There was a message from a name I didn't recognize at first, until I realized it was my dad's former business partner from before Uncle Jack. The subject line read, "Your father did the same thing to me 20 years ago. We need to talk. I guess the family business has always been betrayal. Update 2. Okay, so I met with my dad's old business partner yesterday. The guy who emailed me saying my dad did the same thing to him 20 years ago. His name is Frank and TBH. I was kinda nervous meeting him because what if it was some kind of setup? But we met at a Starbucks in a busy shopping center, so I figured it was safe enough. Frank looked nothing like I expected. He was this chill, older dude in his 60s wearing a faded concert t-shirt and jeans. The first thing he said was that I look exactly like my dad did at my age, which was not something I wanted to hear, LOL. We got our coffees, and Frank started telling me the whole story. Turns out he and my dad were best friends in high school, started the business together right after graduation. For the first 15 years, they were doing great. Had contracts with major builders in the area, were expanding to new locations, the whole thing. Then Frank's wife got cancer. While he was taking care of her and dealing with hospital bills, my dad started making business decisions without consulting him, taking out loans, buying equipment they didn't need, hiring his drinking buddies at ridiculous salaries, including my brothers, who were teenagers at the time. When Frank's wife got better and he tried to step back in, my dad had basically taken over. He showed me actual receipts from back then. My dad had been writing checks to himself from the business account, labeling them as consulting fees to some fake company. Frank confronted him, and my dad did exactly what he's doing to me now. Turned the whole family against Frank, made up lies about him stealing, even tried to forge Frank's signature on documents to transfer ownership of the business. The only reason Frank didn't sue was because his wife was still recovering, and he didn't want the stress of a court battle. He walked away with almost nothing from a business he'd helped build for 15 years. I asked Frank why he was telling me all this now. He said he'd been following the business over the years, watching it slowly fail under my dad's management. When he heard through mutual connections about what happened to me, he wanted to warn me that my dad wouldn't stop until he'd taken everything. As we were leaving, Frank handed me a thumb drive, said it had copies of all the original business documents, financial records, and emails from when he and my dad were partners. Told me I might find it useful. When I got back to Uncle Jack's and plugged in that drive, holy shit, the pattern was exactly the same. My dad had been running this scam for decades, building something up, pushing out partners, then running the business into the ground while siphoning money into his personal accounts. The next day, I had my appointment with the IRS. I was nervous as hell because who isn't scared of the IRS, right? But the agent I met with, this lady named Miss Peterson, was actually super helpful. I showed her all my documentation, the fraudulent tax forms, the credit card statements, everything. She took it all very seriously and said they would be opening an investigation. The best part? She told me I wasn't liable for any of the fraud since I could prove I never worked for the business during those tax years. She even helped me file for identity theft protection with the IRS, so my family couldn't try to use my SSN for taxes again. When I got out of that meeting, I had 3 missed calls from my mom. I almost ignored them like all the others, but something told me to listen to at least one voicemail. And wow, the tone had completely changed. She was practically sobbing, saying they needed to talk to me about a family emergency and could I please call them back ASAP. I texted her instead of calling, just wrote, "What's the emergency?" Her response came back immediately. "The business is being audited by the IRS. They froze all our accounts. We need your help." No shit they were being audited. I literally just left the IRS office. I didn't respond, but later that day, Edward called Uncle Jack's landline. How did they even get that number? Uncle Jack picked up, and I could hear my brother's voice from across the room, all panicky and desperate. Uncle Jack just listened for a minute, then said they should have thought about consequences before stealing from family and hung up. That night, I went through the thumb drive Frank gave me more carefully. There were folders for each year of the business, going back to before I was even born. In the most recent folders, I found something interesting, PDF copies of loan applications in the business name from just a few months ago. These weren't for the $80K they wanted me to co-sign. These were for smaller amounts, like $15K here, $20K there. But there were a lot of them. And the stated purpose for all these loans? Business expansion and equipment. Except, I knew from their financial docs that they hadn't expanded or bought new equipment in years. So where was all this money going? I dug deeper and found spreadsheets tracking personal expenses for my dad, mom, and brothers. Vacation homes, boat payments, a fucking timeshare in Florida, my sister's wedding next month that's apparently costing over $50K. They were bankrupting the business to fund their lifestyles while telling everyone, including me, that they were struggling. The next morning, I woke up to an actual gift basket on Uncle Jack's porch, like one of those fancy ones with cheeses and chocolates and shit. The card said, "We're family. Families forgive. Call us. Mom and Dad." I took a picture and sent it to Uncle Jack, who was at work. He texted back, "LOL, they sent me one too when they stole my boat. Don't fall for it." That afternoon, my phone rang with Lila's number. Against my better judgment, I answered. She immediately started with this sweet, concerned voice asking how I was doing and if I was ready to be reasonable. I just listened as she went on about how the family business was struggling and they really needed my help to clear up some misunderstandings with the bank and IRS. I asked her flat out, did she know about the timeshare in Florida and the vacation home they bought using business loans? There was this long pause, and then she got defensive, saying they deserved nice things after working so hard for so many years. I laughed and asked if she knew her $50K wedding was being paid for with fraudulent loans. She started screaming that I was trying to ruin her special day, that her fiancé's family would be humiliated if they had to scale back the wedding, and that if I really loved her, I would help fix this misunderstanding with the banks. When I refused, she pulled out the big guns, said the whole extended family was coming for her wedding, including our grandparents, who I actually do care about and haven't seen in years. She said if I didn't help them out, they'd tell everyone what a traitor I was, and I'd never be welcome at family gatherings again. I told her that ship had already sailed when they threw me out of my apartment and stole all my stuff. She hung up on me. Later that day, I got a group text from several cousins asking what was going on with Uncle Jack and why I was staying with him. Apparently, my parents had been telling the extended family that I had some kind of mental breakdown, stole money from the business, and Uncle Jack was enabling me. I didn't respond to the group, but I did text my favorite cousin Josh individually with the real story and some screenshots of the evidence. He called me immediately, completely shocked, said he'd always suspected something was off with how my parents treated me, but had no idea it was this bad. Josh agreed to quietly let a few trusted family members know what was really happening, just to counter my parents' narrative. By that evening, I was getting messages of support from aunts and uncles I hadn't talked to in years. The next day was when shit really hit the fan. I decided it was time for phase 2 of my plan. I contacted the 3 main lenders who had approved those smaller business loans I found on the thumb drive. I introduced myself as a family member concerned about potential fraud and asked if they could confirm what the stated purpose of the loans had been. All 3 confirmed they were for business equipment and expansion. I asked if they required proof that the funds were used for business purposes. They said yes, usually receipts or invoices. I thanked them and sent each one a formal letter with documentation attached, showing that the loan money had actually been used for personal expenses like Lila's wedding, the timeshare, etc. I made it clear I wasn't asking them to take any specific action. I was just concerned about potential fraud and thought they should know. Within 24 hours, my dad showed up at Uncle Jack's place again. This time, he brought Dale with him, and they were pissed. They started pounding on the door, yelling that I was destroying the family. Uncle Jack called the cops again, but before they arrived, my dad kicked in the door of the guest house. He lunged at me, grabbing me by the shirt and slamming me against the wall. Dale stood in the doorway, blocking the exit. My dad was screaming in my face, spitting with rage, saying I had no idea what I'd done, that the banks were calling in their loans and they were going to lose everything. I managed to get my phone out of my pocket and started recording. As soon as my dad saw the phone, he tried to grab it, but I ducked away. That's when he really lost it. He picked up the desk chair and threw it across the room. Dale finally seemed to realize things had gone too far and tried to pull my dad back, saying this wasn't helping anything. My dad shoved Dale so hard he fell backwards out the door. The cops showed up right as my dad was trying to grab me again. They separated us immediately, and this time Uncle Jack and I both pressed charges for breaking and entering, destruction of property, and assault. As they were putting my dad in the police car, he was still yelling, but what he said next actually made me laugh. He screamed that I'd always been jealous of my brothers because they were real men who worked with their hands, while I was just a calculator jockey who couldn't handle real work. The truth? I make more money in 2 months than their business does in a year. I've never been jealous of them. They've been jealous of me. Every time I got a good grade, every time I achieved something, every time I built my own success without their precious family business, it reminded them of their own failures. After the cops left, I got a call from my mom. She was sobbing, saying my dad was being held on bail they couldn't afford because all their accounts were frozen. She begged me to help get him out. I told her I'd think about it. And I did think about it, for about 5 seconds. Then I called Lila, told her if she wanted any chance of having her dream wedding, she needed to tell me exactly how much money they'd been hiding and where it was. She hesitated, then admitted there was a safe in my parents' bedroom with about $30K in cash, money that should have gone to the business, but my dad had been skimming for years. I thanked her for the information and hung up. Then I called the IRS agent I'd met with and left her a detailed message about the hidden cash. That night, Uncle Jack and I sat on his back porch drinking beers. He asked if I felt bad about what was happening to my family. Honestly, I don't. They've been stealing from me, lying about me, and treating me like shit for 28 years. All I did was tell the truth. This morning, I got another call from my grandparents. They wanted to know if I'd be attending Lila's wedding next month. I told them probably not, given everything that's happened. My grandmother sighed and said she understood, then hesitated before adding, "Your father was always just like his father. Mean, jealous, and never satisfied with what he had. Turns out the cycle of toxic behavior goes back generations, and I'm the one finally breaking it. The wedding is in 2 weeks. My dad's still dealing with legal issues from the assault. The business is under investigation, and I just received an official letter from one of the banks demanding immediate repayment of a $20K loan due to misrepresentation of purpose. This isn't over yet, not by a long shot. Final update. The day of Lila's wedding was supposed to be this past Saturday. Spoiler alert, It didn't happen. So my last update was about 2 weeks ago. A lot has happened since then. I wasn't planning to update so soon, but my phone legit hasn't stopped blowing up for the past 48 hours and I need to vent somewhere. First, let me catch you up. Remember how I told the IRS about that $30K cash my parents had hidden in their bedroom? Well, apparently they raided the house like 3 days later. My cousin Josh was at our aunt's house when my mom called her hysterically crying about men in suits going through all their stuff and finding the money exactly where Lila said it would be. Honestly, I didn't expect them to move that fast, but I guess when you report tax fraud and tell them exactly where to find hidden cash, they don't waste time. The same day as the raid, my brother Dale texted me, not to apologize or anything, just to say, "Thanks for nothing, asshole," and that Edward was considering his options, whatever TF that means. I ignored it. Then last week I got this weird email from my mom. Subject line just said, "Please read." The email itself was super formal, like she'd had someone else write it for her. It basically said that while they were disappointed in my choices, they wanted to open a dialogue about the misunderstandings between us. The whole thing read like a corporate PR statement. I forwarded it to Uncle Jack and he just replied with a laughing emoji. The next day, I got a notification from my banking app that someone had tried to log into my account from an unrecognized device. I immediately changed all my passwords and set up extra security. Then I called the bank to see if they could tell me where the login attempt came from. They couldn't give me specifics but confirmed it was from my hometown. So my family was still trying to access my accounts. These people seriously don't give up. I decided to check on the business situation since I hadn't looked into it for a while. Did some Googling and found that their business listing was marked as temporarily closed on Google Maps. Their website was down too. I texted one of their former suppliers I'd spoken to before, the one who'd mentioned putting them on credit hold, and just asked if they were still doing business with my family. He called me back almost immediately, said not only had they stopped supplying my family's business, but a bunch of other suppliers had too. Apparently word had spread through the industry about their financial problems and questionable practices. He also mentioned that my dad and brothers had been bad-mouthing me to anyone who would listen, claiming I was the one who had mismanaged their accounts before leaving the business. The supplier knew this was bullshit because I'd already told him I never worked for the family business. He actually laughed and said my dad wasn't the first shady contractor he'd dealt with and wouldn't be the last. 3 days before the wedding, I got a call from my grandmother, Dad's mom. She sounded tired and asked if I'd be coming to Lila's wedding. I told her probably not, given everything that had happened. She was quiet for a moment, then asked if what they were saying about me was true, that I'd stolen business funds and was working with the IRS to destroy the family. I couldn't believe they were still pushing that narrative. I told her the truth, showed her the eviction notice, explained how they'd stolen my identity, forged my signature, and kicked me out of my apartment. She didn't say much during my explanation, just listened. When I was done, she sighed and said something that honestly hit me hard. "Your grandfather and I worried about how your father was raising you kids. He always favored the ones who agreed with him and punished anyone who showed independence. We should have said something sooner." That was the closest thing to an apology I'd gotten from anyone in the family. We talked for a bit longer, and she mentioned that a lot of relatives were questioning the wedding now that financial issues had come up. The venue had apparently called Lila asking for the remaining balance, and no one could pay it. The day before the wedding, I woke up to 27 missed calls. Not exaggerating, 27. Most from my mom, some from Lila, a few from Edward. I listened to one voicemail from each. Mom's was her sobbing about how Lila's wedding was falling apart and it was all my fault. Edward's was him threatening to find me if I didn't help fix things. But Lila's was different. She actually sounded defeated, said she'd had to call off the wedding because the venue canceled when they couldn't make the final payment. Her fiancé's family was asking questions about why everything fell through at the last minute. Then she said something that actually made me feel a tiny bit bad for her. "I know you hate us, and maybe we deserve it, but I'm losing the man I love because he thinks my family is a bunch of criminals. I mean, they literally are criminals. But still, for the first time I could hear in her voice that she was facing real consequences for the family's actions, not just financial ones. I didn't call any of them back. What was I supposed to say? Sorry your fraudulently funded wedding got canceled? The day the wedding was supposed to happen, I got a text from Josh. He'd gone to my grandparents' house where some small family gathering was happening. I guess for relatives who had already traveled for the wedding. He said my parents showed up and it was awkward. Apparently my dad tried to give a speech about family loyalty, and my grandfather straight up told him to sit down and shut up. According to Josh, my grandfather said something like, "You've embarrassed this family enough." Then yesterday morning, things got really weird. I was making coffee in Uncle Jack's kitchen when my phone started blowing up with notifications. Turned out my dad had sent a group email to the entire extended family with the subject line, "The Truth About Vincent." The email was unhinged, like full-on conspiracy theory level stuff. He claimed I had been systematically sabotaging the family business for years, that I had connections in the banking industry who were helping me destroy their credit, that I had always been jealous of my brothers and was now getting revenge. The best part? He attached a bunch of evidence, which was literally just screenshots of my LinkedIn profile and some random business documents that proved absolutely nothing. Within an hour, people were replying, all with questions, confusion, and in some cases straight up calling my dad crazy. My aunt, mom's sister, replied with, "Are you drunk? This is embarrassing." My cousin replied with just, "Sir, this is a Wendy's," which honestly made me laugh out loud. By the afternoon, my dad had sent 3 more increasingly angry emails, each making less sense than the last. In the final one, he accused Uncle Jack of harboring a fugitive, me, and threatened to report him to the police. Uncle Jack's response was to forward the entire email chain to my dad's lawyer with a note saying, "You might want to advise your client to stop making libelous statements in writing." That shut him up real quick. This morning, I woke up to a text from Edward. All it said was, "We need to talk in person. Urgent." I ignored it. An hour later, Dale called. I almost didn't answer, but figured what the hell? He sounded different, subdued. He said they'd gotten a foreclosure notice on the family house. The business was officially bankrupt. Dad was facing potential criminal charges for tax fraud and identity theft. Mom was having some kind of breakdown and kept talking about moving in with me. I literally laughed out loud. Moving in with me? The son you all threw out and left homeless? Dale didn't even argue. He just sighed and said they had nowhere else to go. The extended family had turned on them. Their credit was destroyed. They couldn't even rent an apartment with their history now. I told him that wasn't my problem. He said he knew that, but would I at least meet with him to figure something out for Mom's sake? I told him I'd think about it and hung up. Uncle Jack heard the whole conversation and just shook his head. "The amazing thing," he said, "is that even now, they still think they're entitled to your help. And that's really it, isn't it? The entitlement. They spent my entire life treating me like I was worthless, like I owed them something just for existing. They stole from me, lied about me, physically attacked me, and now they expect me to save them? Hell no." I texted Dale back one word, "No." Then I blocked his number, and my mom's, and my dad's, and Lila's, and Edward's. Here's where things stand now. I'm still staying at Uncle Jack's, but I found an apartment and I'm moving in next week. I've managed to replace most of the stuff my family stole, though I'm still pissed about my gaming console. My credit is slowly recovering now that the fraudulent accounts have been removed. Meanwhile, my family's business is gone. Their house is being foreclosed on. Dad is facing criminal charges. Their reputation in the community is destroyed, and they have absolutely nowhere to go. All I did was tell the truth. I didn't lie. I didn't cheat. I didn't steal. I just made sure that all the right people knew what they had done. And honestly, it feels fucking amazing. Sometimes the best revenge isn't some elaborate scheme. Sometimes it's just making sure people face the consequences of their own actions. My phone just buzzed again. Another number I don't recognize. Probably another family member trying to reach me. Not my problem anymore.